Hey everyone, welcome back to our YouTube channel. I hope our last video of series OWASP Top 10 was helpful and informative, which gives overall idea of vulnerability, security logging and monitoring failures. Before we start, if you are new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell icon for the latest updates on the cybersecurity and tech. Today we are diving into a fascinating and critical topic in the world of web security, which is Server-Side Request Forgery, or you can say SSRF. This is the newly added vulnerability in the OWASP Top 10 list of year 2021. SSRF is a vulnerability that allows an attacker to make requests to any resource that the web server can access. This might sound complicated, but don't worry. By the end of this video, you will have a clear understanding of what SSRF is, how it works, and why it is so dangerous. In this video, we'll cover what is SSRF, how SSRF attacks are carried out, common use cases of SSRF attacks, types of SSRF vulnerability, what kind of damage SSRF can do, vulnerability exploitation examples, how to protect your system against SSRF. So let's get started. In today's digital age, protecting your organization's web application from security threats is a very important part. Server-side request forgery attacks are one such threat that can compromise your systems and expose sensitive data. This video will introduce you to the concept of SSRF attack and explore various methods to prevent them. By understanding the dangers of SSRF and adopting the best practices, you can significantly improve your organization's cybersecurity posture and keep your valuable information safe. Server-side request forgery is a type of attack where an attacker exploits vulnerabilities in a web application or manipulates server-side requests. These attacks typically target applications that import data from URLs or allow data retrievals from URLs. The primary goal of an SSRF attack is to gain unauthorized access to internal resources and sensitive information. An attacker can exploit server-side request forgery vulnerabilities to bypass access controls, carry out malicious actions, and ultimately compromise the target system. To defend against SSRF attack, it is crucial to understand the underlying vulnerabilities and implement robust security measures. Common targets of SSRF attacks are: SSRF attacks typically targets web applications with misconfigured access controls, vulnerable third-party services, and insecure URL parsers. The most common target include web applications that permit user to supply URL for importing data such as images or documents. Applications using vulnerable third-party libraries or services that handle URL parsing or request. Systems that lack proper input validation and sanitization, enabling attackers to manipulate URLs and perform unauthorized actions. By understanding the common targets of SSRF attacks, you can better identify potential vulnerabilities within your web applications and take necessary steps to protect your systems. SSRF attack takes advantage of flaws in web applications, enabling threat actors to make an organization's application behave in unintended ways. The technique has been featured in the OWASP Top 10 due to the potential impact it can have on organization's security posture. Here is a figure which is showing that attackers manipulate the vulnerable web application by injecting a payload included in request to vulnerable web application. Even when they are behind firewall or VPN or any other form of network segmentation, and it successfully delivers the response from the targeted application. Common use cases of SSRF attacks: scanning the ports of internal servers within the network to map internal networks, collect sensitive data by accessing a local file such as /etc/shadow or /etc password, access the metadata of cloud services that is stored within the network, conduct remote code execution to compromise servers on the local network, create operational downtime by launching a denial of service attacks. In order to effectively defend against server-side request forgery attacks, it is essential to understand the different types of SSRF attacks that exist. By being aware of these attack variations, you can better identify the threats or organization faces and take the necessary precautions. There are three types of SSRF attacks that can be identified based on how the server responds to the initial request. First, blind SSRF. A blind SSRF is a bit harder to track since nothing is sent from the server to the hacker. In this case, an SSRF request is made, and instead of sending back data, the server gives permission for the bad actor to make changes to the server itself. From there, the hacker can modify the website or web application crash, an action typically called as a denial of service attack, or take another action that disrupts the effective functioning of the company. Since there is nothing sent from server to hacker, it can be harder to spot these attacks until the damage is done. Semi-blind SSRF. Similar to the blind SSRF, this type of attack does not return much data, but the data it does return can be helpful for attackers to later use to plan a more in-depth attack. If could include data points like error messages or response times. Non-blind SSRF. Essentially, in a basic SSRF attack, the server returns data to the hacker when prompted by the initial request. This allows the hacker to walk away with this data or use it to gain entry to parts of the server that they would normally be barred of accessing. What kind of damage can SSRF do? Honestly speaking, the damage extent is hard to predict as outcome becomes depend on the system configuration, API security practices adopted, and the severity of the attack. To understand the impact of SSRF, let's look at some real-world examples. One notable incident occurred with the Capital One in 2019. A misconfigured web application firewall allowed an attacker to exploit an SSRF vulnerability, leading to the exposure of sensitive data from Amazon S3 buckets. However, certain standard dangers follow for sure if an SSRF against you is successful. Here are few examples of what may happen. Remote code execution. It is a potential danger of successful SSRF attack. Most modern applications use ample HTTP requests, and their improper control or management grants an opportunity for attackers for RCE. Mostly, RCE targets the core servers like Redis because it could fetch hackers more info that is precious to the victim. Second, port scans or a cross-site port attack, which is XSPA. It is not necessary that SSRF related attack will have to bring the response data to the hacker. To avoid missing any response, any attacker can take the help of open port. Using an open port, it is easy to carry out a quick network scan of application server. This is known as XSPA. Also, it's worth noting that network connection timeout maintains the original value and it is not bothered about the status of port or host. A seasoned attacker can use this feature to carry out an SSRF attack by using an acceptable request and using it to define the future network connection timelines. Once the request is accepted, attackers are able to record the service existence details on the targeted network and perform the protocol smuggling assaults. Data exposure. If successful SSRF vulnerability grants hackers admin-like access to the data stored on the server and its backend system. Now, if you are wondering how much data can be exposed or compromised, then it is crucial to understand that it depends on the permissions given to a IAM rules. If too many permissions allowed, then entire customer account details can be compromised. Denial of service. As we all know, DOS refers to preventing authorized or permitted users to access a particular resource. When SSRF is considered, the resource here is the server. Because of receiving a higher number of requests, internal servers are designed to handle a reduced bandwidth. However, skilled threat actors can overflow the internal servers with huge traffic. This leads to a DOS attack. Typical exploitation of a server-side request forgery vulnerability. In a typical SSRF scenario, an external attacker who wants to access an internal server can't use direct requests because they would be blocked by the firewall. Instead, malicious actors can exploit an SSRF vulnerability to make their attack via a vulnerable web server. The attacker sends a forged request to the web server that is vulnerable to SSRF and resides on the same internal network as the target server. The vulnerable web server sends the attacker controlled request to the victim server bypassing the firewall. The victim server responds to the web server with the requested data. If the specific SSRF vulnerability permits it, the data is sent back to the attacker. In most cases, the attacker will need to exfilter or infer this information by other names or by out of bond. In the next section, we'll look at how these attacks are executed and explore some examples of incidents where SSRF has caused significant damage. Here I am using the Portswigger website to solve the lab of SSRF, the lab which contains the basic SSRF against the local server. This lab has a stock check feature which fetches data from an internal system. To solve the lab, we have to change the stock check URL to access the admin interface at http localhost/admin and delete the Carlos user. Solution to the lab is we have to browse the stock API. We have to browse the product, and in product we have to click on the check stock option and intercept that request in burp suite. And after intercepting, we have to manipulate the option to http localhost/admin in stock API parameter. By replacing that URL, we can get the administration interface in a web page, and after that we can get access to the Carlos delete URL. Here this web page is showing only home and my account option, and afterward we have to check for admin panel. Here I am clicking on the view details of product option. After scrolling down, it is showing the check stock option which we have to intercept in burp suite. Here I am selecting the Paris and clicking on check stock. The request which we have to manipulate is displayed, and normally send that request to the repeater. In repeater tab, the request which we have to the parameter which we have to manipulate is stock API. Here by default, stock API parameter containing the product ID equals to 2 and store ID equals to 2. Now we have to manipulate that by replacing it to http localhost/admin option, localhost/admin, and normally hit that request. The request gives 200 OK option, and it normally just get in render. It is giving the admin panel now. As we discussed earlier, it is showing home and my account. Now the admin panel is visible. So I'll check that response in browser also by copying the link. In browser I'll paste that link, and here it is showing the options for deleting Wiener and Carlos users. Now I'll just click on delete Carlos user to delete, but it is not giving access from here to delete the Carlos user. Now I just normally check in intercept that the body parameter of Carlos by using the interceptor. The body parameter of Carlos includes the href/admin/delete username equals to Carver. So this path we have to replace with the localhost/admin to delete the Carlos user. So we'll check in the browser also, burp suite also, that the response body containing the same or not. So in response body, it is also giving the path for deleting the user Carlos. Now just normally copy that path and replace it with the stock API URL and hit that send button. It is giving the 302 follow redirection, and it is not showing in render, but after checking in the browser, the user is successfully deleted. As you can see, it is showing a pop-up that congratulations, you have solved the lab, and user is get deleted. Now let's see what are the prevention measures for SSRF attack. Protecting your web applications from SSRF attacks requires a combination of best practices, tools, techniques, and methodologies. To mitigate the risk of SSRF attacks, consider the following measure. Implement proper input validation and sanitization. It will ensure that all user-supplied data, including URLs, are validated and sanitized to prevent malicious input from being processed. Second, use allow listed for URLs and IP addresses. It restricts the range of allowed URLs and IP addresses to minimize the attack surface and prevent unauthorized access to internal resources. Third, secure third-party services and libraries. Ensure that third-party services and libraries used in your web applications are up to date and configured securely. Monitor and log requests. Implement monitoring and logging mechanisms to detect and investigate potential SSRF attacks in real time. Perform regular security testing. Conduct application security penetration testing to identify vulnerabilities in your web applications and address them proactively. By adopting these measures, you can significantly reduce the likelihood of SSRF attacks and safeguard your web application from potential threats. Although SSRF attacks are not that common, this type of vulnerability remains a risk factor for organizations. Not later than last year, cyber researchers discovered 4 of Microsoft Azure services were vulnerable to full server-side request forgery attacks. Fortunately, in that instant, the security issues were patched in timely manner, but obviously it is not always the case. Prevention remains the smartest approach in tackling DNS server and network security. At Vista InfoSec, our expert team is dedicated to help you identify potential SSRF vulnerabilities and protect your organization from SSRF attacks. With our innovative security solutions and cutting-edge technologies, we can access your web application for vulnerabilities, implement robust security measures, and provide ongoing monitoring and support to ensure the safety of your systems. Don't let SSRF vulnerabilities put your organization at risk. That's it for today's video on server-side request forgery. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe our channel for more security tips and tutorials. Thanks for watching.